everybody, and welcome to Plaid Stallion's Toyventures. I am Bryan, your host, and today's episode is something I've always wanted to do, and thanks to a fairly decent buy it now on eBay, I am finally able to talk about the highly influential, but not terribly successful, ROM Space Knight from Parker Brothers. This may come as a bit of a surprise, but other than a loose, incomplete one I bought for a project decades ago, I've never held or played with a working ROM before, especially one boxed like this. I've always been a fan, as evidenced by our podcast mascot, but never been able to actually get the deal done. So as I've mentioned, ROM was released by Parker Brothers in 1979, which seems kind of unusual for a company known for board games. But when you take a closer look, you can see how the pieces fit together, and it all starts to make some sense. Now, ROM has more than one father, but the man who got the ball rolling was a man known as Bryan Lawrence McCoy, a musician and toy inventor who made a name for himself in the industry by creating electronic Battleship for Parker Brothers' rival, Milton Bradley. During this period of time, McCoy was very successful as a toy inventor. In a 2004 interview, link in the description, he claims to have sold as many as 30 toy concepts in the space of 5 years, as electronic toys were really seen as the future. Now, McCoy himself used to have a very detailed site showing the genesis of ROM. Sadly, it's lost to time, but a few interesting items survived, including this very early version of the concept that you may not recognize. See, McCoy first envisioned it as a musical toy based on Egyptian mystical themes, including concepts like meditation. When no toy company bit on this, McCoy retooled the character into a cyborg and named him COBOL, which I believe is a computer programming language. While COBOL looks a little more Flash Gordon than he does Star Wars, it was good enough to catch the attention of Parker Brothers, a company, again, synonymous with board games, but looking to expand its sales to other categories. It's interesting to note that in that same year, McCoy also sold a concept to Parker's competitor, Milton Bradley. Starbird was a generic spaceship that looked like it was just off screen at the Battle of Yavin. However, its electronics features put any Kenner toy to shame, and it was a massive hit for the company. Parker Brothers immediately changed the character's name from COBOL to the simpler ROM, another computer term meaning read-only memory, and then went on to create a more sleek look for the figure himself. ROM was considered a huge risk for Parker Brothers, so some cost-cutting did hit the project, not only in his lack of articulation, but even his eye color. All promotional shots I have with ROM show him with green LED eyes. However, the production toys had red LED eyes. The reason? They were cheaper. And thanks to Mr. McCoy's site, we also have the original Toy Fair reel from 1979 that was shown to buyers. Parts of this were cut up into a television commercial later, but this is the original sales pitch.
Far, far away, in another galaxy, the Knights of the Soul Star Order, defenders of justice and truth, and this one alone could wipe them off the face of creation. He is ROM, Lord of the Soul Star Order, ROM the Wraiths Slayer, ROM the Space Knight. Even he must be careful. The dire Wraiths can assume any form they wish. ROM counters this with the energy analyzer. With it, he can see through appearances and determine the true essence of any being. ROM also has a weapon unique to his order, the neutralizer, which can disorganize any molecular structure. He has rocket pods, which can instantly send him soaring. He has a translator through which he can communicate with any intelligent being in the universe, and his respirator allows him to breathe in any atmosphere. ROM, Lord of the Soul Star Order, ROM the Wraiths Slayer, ROM the Space Knight. A microelectronic creation from Parker Brothers.
Now, McCoy has gone on record saying he developed the item merely as a standalone piece, and the only backstory he gave was that ROM was a cyborg, a fusion of flesh and technology. That is it. However, that backstory would get fleshed out in a rather big way with a person I consider another one of ROM's fathers, Mr. Bill Mantlo. When Parker was launching ROM, they not only wanted an intensive television campaign, but advertising in comic books as well. While comic books based on toy lines are a category unto themselves these days, they were sort of a hit or miss thing in the late 70s. Marvel Comics seemed to be enjoying success, however, with comics based on Star Wars, the Mattel Shogun Warriors, and the Mego Micronauts. The Micronauts comic especially was the brainchild of Marvel scribe Bill Mantlo after his stepson received some of these toys for Christmas. This inspired a fantastic comic series that not only outran the toy line, but the toy company itself. A deal for ROM was struck with Marvel's Jim Shooter, and Mantlo went ahead and created a rich backstory for ROM, making him a space knight from the planet Galador. ROM was the first volunteer to be upgraded into a space knight in a story that sounds a little bit like the Cybermen from Doctor Who, except ROM's a good guy and his human body is kept in storage so that one day he can return to it. ROM has been on a 200-year mission against his sworn enemies, the dire Wraiths, shape-shifting aliens that are up to no good. The first issue was heavily promoted by Marvel, and quite frankly, almost impossible to avoid as a kid. Look at that cover. ROM was a perfect fit for the Marvel Universe at the time, and Mantlo expanded the Space Knight's characters and concepts so richly, it's largely how most people actually remember the character. However, with that aside, let's take a look at the toy and what you get. By the way, if you have photos of yourself meeting ROM as a kid and want to share the stories, I am publishing a book called Mall of Justice about this very thing, and I would very much like to talk to you. My contact information is below. So the first thing I want to get into is the packaging. This is glorious packaging for the late 1970s. It's big, it's got the nice window, bright colors, and just that kind of blend of late 70s quasi-futuristic influence here. Now, mine is a played with version, so I can't really speak to all figures, but I do kind of find Ron stands funny. I don't know if it has to do with the sleekness of the design, but in order to get him to stand and not fall over, he kind of has to be hunched, which doesn't really work all that well for play. Essentially what you do is put 2 batteries in his backpack, and by manipulating the different buttons, you get different sounds, and you can plug in through his side the various attachments so that they light up as well. The first being the translator. ROM's translator lets you imagine that he communicates with other intelligent beings. With this accessory, you can make ROM respond to any question in his electronic language of sounds and lights. Next, we have the energy analyzer, which, full disclosure, was not in the box. If anybody has one they want to sell me, a little help. With his energy analyzer, flashing lights, and synthesized sound effects, you can imagine ROM scanning his environment to detect both good and evil. And finally, and this is the big one, the neutralizer. ROM's neutralizer emits a crackling burst of sound and light. Armed with this weapon, ROM seems almost invincible. Beware to all who oppose him. Now in the Marvel Comics, this was more like a portal gun that would leave ash, making you think they killed somebody. The ROM figure itself also features some bells and whistles. He has, of course, these amazing eyes. His lifelike respirator comes on and off, and it makes it look like he's breathing. I remember in the commercials, this kind of gave me the creeps a little bit. And finally, and this would be my favorite feature, the rocket pack. You can imagine ROM blasting off and flying through space at the touch of a button. The twin pods ignite with booster sounds and flickering energy lights. And this is my favorite feature of ROM. A lot of people have told me over the years they were disappointed in ROM, or, you know, they always wanted it as a kid. When they got it, they kind of found it a little bland. And I don't think they're wrong. So much so that I actually was worried I would find this disappointing. But actually, I think I really would have liked this toy as a kid, especially these electronic features. I mean, they were pretty mind-blowing for the late 1970s. And I certainly could see myself running around the basement with ROM's rockets going. I think the biggest problem would be batteries with this guy, or losing some of his pieces, but he would have been very welcome in my backyard superhero collection. Hey everyone, just a quick reminder, if you like this channel and what I do, please consider checking out my shop. I have 11 issues of Toyventures magazine available, as well as 2 books, multiple action figures, and a series of collector pins. I'll put the link to the shop in the description, and I thank you for considering it. ROM got released internationally, notably Micronauts of France, and possibly the most interesting would be Palitoy in the UK picked him up as well. Not releasing him as a standalone item, but part of Action Man's Space Force, giving him not only a cool box, but even little comic advertisements showing him hanging out with Action Man.
Talking Commander calling. Did the Space Ranger and the Solar Hurricane pick up any signal? Where is the Space Knight ROM? The Command Center. Talking Commander. Solar Hurricane. ROM. What strange force will bring them together? Only you know the answer. You and ROM Palitoy.
Despite catching a ton of media attention, I mean, this toy was on the cover of Time, ROM was not a hot item. It did not sell that well for Parker Brothers. And I think that's just on the toy itself. And I think the answer can be found in an answer McCoy gave in an interview when asked about what were the competing toys for this. And he said, well, maybe Starbird. I don't know if there were any comparables. While the 1/6 scale ruled the toy lines at the beginning of the decade, at the end it was actually something of a boutique or a rarity. The $6 Million Man having concluded in 1978, and the only things available would be the 12-inch Star Wars line, which was also not a hit for Kenner. ROM would have been a giant with your Micronauts or your Star Wars figures. Tack on a higher price and, well, the world loved ROM. But they weren't into buying the ROM toy. After the Parker Brothers license expired, Marvel did bring ROM back in some clever ways, never really naming him ROM, never really showing the armor. It's one of those things where, yeah, it's part of the Marvel Universe, but it belongs to someone else, and that's why we don't get to see Bug in a Guardians of the Galaxy movie. I still don't get that. IDW would create a new version of ROM for their Hasbro comic book universe, integrating all their properties into one. Likely due to legal red tape, they had to create a new world, Ilona, and a new backstory. However, the dire Wraiths still are the big baddies. While that series did enjoy some popularity, it was more exciting to fans that this year, the first 29 issues of the series will be reprinted in an omnibus. We have been waiting for this for a very long time. Now, we've gotten a few ROM toys over the years, most notably a Funko Pop. And this figure, which came in a Hasbro San Diego Comic-Con set with some little Micronauts, a Matt Tracker, and I believe a Decepticon of some kind. And honestly, if you had shown 10-year-old me this figure or the 12-inch figure, I'd have gone for the small one. That would have been perfect. He would have fit in with all my universes. I knew who the character was. I definitely think this format would have sold better to kids. So there you have it, folks. That is the Toyventures look at ROM Space Knight, one of the most influential toys of the 1970s, but not one of the more successful ones. But I still say the age of ROM has yet to come. There's talk of movies, there's talk of action figures. I am excited to see what this future brings for my favorite Space Knight from Galador. That's all the time I have for this week on Toyventures. Thank you, as always, for watching. If you're new to this, please consider hitting like and subscribe. This is what I do. Until next time, be well and talk toys, not other people. Cheers, and thank you for watching.